ito na ngayon pinag-informe ko. Technica. Kaya.
So, exclusive lang po sa Signal.
According to Sir Jose Victor Torres, the history professor.
Ayaw mo?
Mali.
Pananaw at opinyon ng pag-uulat na mag-uulat sa programang ito ay hindi ang pangunahing posisyon o pahayag ng organisasyong ito.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Inclusive Report. Today is Friday, August 7, 2020. I am your host for tonight, Carlos Miguel Kanahashi, on behalf of Roylan, Zedric, Billy, Asher, and Danmar. And before we start, we will begin with the recitation of the Oratio Imperata against COVID-19. Mga ka-HNI members at sa inyong lahat, ating pong dasalin ang Oratio Imperata laban sa COVID-19. Makapangyarihan at mapagmahal na Ama, nagsusumamo kami sa iyo upang hiningin ang inyong patnubay laban sa COVID-19 na nagpapahirap sa marami at kumitil na ng mga buhay. Gabayan mo ang mga dalawasang naatasan na tumuklas ng mga lunas at paraan upang hihinto ang paglaganap nito. Paktubayan mo ang mga lumilingak sa may sakit upang ang kanilang pagkalinga ay malakipan ng husay at malasakit. Itinaas namin ang mga nagdurusa. Makatamtam nawa nila ang mabuting kalusugan. Ingapin mo rin ang mga kumakalinga sa kanila, pagkamitin mo na kapayapaang walang hanggan ang mga kumanaw. Pagkalooban mo kami ng biyaya na magtulong-tulong tungo sa ikabubuti ng lahat. Ukawin sa amin ang pagmamalasakit sa mga nangangailangan. Nagsusumamo kami na inyong ihinto na ang paglaganap ng virus at ipadya kami sa lahat ng mga tao. Hiniling namin ito sa pamamagitan ni Jesucristo na nabubuhay at nanghaharing kasama mo at ng Espiritu Santo, iisang Diyos, magpasawalang hanggan. Dumudulog kami sa iyong patnubay, mahal na Ina ng Diyos. Pakinggan mo ang aming mga kahilingan sa aming pangangailangan at ipadya mo kami sa lahat ng kasamaan. Magpapati at magpalang Birhen, mahal na Birhen, papagaling sa may sakit, panalangin mo kami. San Rafael, Arkanghel, ipanalangin mo kami. San Roque, panalangin mo kami. San Renzo Ruiz, ipanalangin mo kami. San Pedro Calungsod, panalangin mo kami. Amen. Okay, and this evening we will be discussing to you about the persecution of persons with disabilities. Let's now dig deeper with this. Without further ado, here now is PWD persecution. More than 500 million people in the world are disabled as a consequence of mental, physical, or sensory impairment. They are entitled to the same rights as all other human beings and to equal opportunities. Too often their lives are handicapped by physical and social barriers in society which hamper their full participation. Because of this, millions of children and adults in all parts of the world and often face a life that is segregated and debased. Many of them are disabled physically and psychologically as a result of their sufferings from persecution, violence, and hazards. An analysis of the situation of disabled persons has to be carved out within the context of different levels of economic and social development and different cultures. Everywhere, however, the ultimate responsibility for remedying the conditions that deeply impairment and for dealing with the consequences of disability rests with governments. This does not weaken the responsibility of society in general or of individuals or of organizations. Governments should take the lead in awakening the consciousness of populations regarding the gains to be derived by individuals and society from the inclusion of disabled persons in every area of social, economic, and political life. Governments must also ensure that people who are made dependent by severe disability have an opportunity to achieve standard living equal to that of their fellow citizens. Non-governmental organizations can, in different ways, assist governments in formulating needs, suggesting suitable solutions and providing services complementary to those provided by governments. Sharing of financial and material resources by all sections of the population, not omitting the rural areas of developing countries, could be of major significance to disabled persons by resulting in expanded community services and improved economic opportunities. Much disability could be prevented through measures taken against malnutrition, environmental pollution, poor hygiene, inadequate prenatal and postnatal care, waterborne diseases, and accidents of all types. The international community could make a major breakthrough against disabilities caused by poliomyelitis, tetanus, whooping cough, and diphtheria. It will lesser extent tuberculosis through a worldwide expansion of programs and immunization. In many countries, the prerequisites for achieving the purposes of the program are economic and social development, extended services provided to the whole population in the humanitarian area, that is distribution of resources and income, and an improvement in the living standards of the population. It is necessary to use every effort to prevent wars leading to devastation, catastrophe, and poverty, hunger, suffering, diseases, and mass disability of people, and therefore to adopt measures at all levels to strengthen international peace and security, to settle all international disputes by peaceful means, and to eliminate all forms of racism and racial discrimination in countries where they still exist. It will also be desirable to recommend to all states members of the United Nations that they may maximize the use of the resources for peaceful purposes, including prevention of disability and satisfaction of the needs of disabled persons. All forms of technical assistance that help developing countries to move towards these objectives can support the implementation of the program. The realization of these objectives will, however, require extended periods of effort during which the number of disabled persons is likely to increase. Without effective remedial action, the consequences of disability will add to the obstacles to development. Hence, it is essential that all nations should include in their general development plans immediate measures for the prevention of disability, for the rehabilitation of disabled persons, and for the equalization of opportunities. Handicap is therefore a function of the relationship between disabled persons and their environment. It occurs when they encounter cultural, physical, or social barriers which prevent their access to the various systems of society that are available to other citizens. Thus, handicap is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in the life of the community on an equal level with others. Disabled people do not form a homogeneous group. For example, the mentally ill and the mentally retarded, the visually, hearing, and speech impairment, and those with restricted mobility or with so-called medical disabilities all encounter different barriers or different kinds, which have to be overcome in different ways. Examples: The United Nations estimates that close to 900,000 Rohingya refugees have fled violence and persecution in Myanmar and now live within displacement camps in Bangladesh. The Rohingya are among the world's most persecuted population because even though they live in the Rakhine state of Myanmar for centuries, they are denied Burmese citizenship under the law. Okay, we're all on right now. Okay, this one, the Rohingya, these are the ethnic groups in Myanmar. They live closer to the border of Bangladesh and Myanmar. This means that they cannot grant Burmese citizenship under the law. Okay? And this one, this is a story, an excerpt. Suddenly, his co-workers slightly changed their looks on RD. In 2013, the management of his job was changed due to the incumbent mayor was lost to the opposite candidate. There are some changes on his workplace. His workplace are now bullies. He also received an improper treatment for them, like buying food for them, punching him, mockery. They always borrowed money from him without returning, and he is always reported to his supervisor. He was also arrested by the police at the same time. He was released by the police due to incomplete evidence against his supervisors before Christmas. He wanted to die and to commit suicide. His mother cried on the situation. I want to die. I am useless in this world, he said. When he was applied by some companies, he was rejected always and experienced depression. He was also cried every day due to the scenario. About 32 companies rejected him due to injustices. This is always his words came from his mouth. I want to work, not on being a burden. I want to work. This is what one of RD or Rogelio Daguman, one of the sanctioned members of Hans Inclusion Philippines. He is going to be persecuted. Based on this story, he wanted to die and he was useless. A lot of companies already been rejected because of his unprofessional behavior. Okay, so we have three: prevention, rehabilitation, and equalization of opportunities. Prevention means measures aimed at preventing the onset of mental, physical, and sensory impairments or at preventing impairment when it has occurred from having negative physical, psychological, and social consequences. Rehabilitation means a goal-oriented and time-limited process aimed at enabling an impaired person to reach an optimum mental, physical, and or social functional level, thus providing her or him with the tools to change her or his own life. It can involve measures intended to compensate for a loss of function or a functional limitation, for example, by technical aids, and other measures intended to facilitate social adjustment or readjustment. Equalization of opportunities means the process through which the general system of society, such as the physical and cultural environment, housing and transportation, social and health services, education and work opportunities, cultural and social life, including sports and recreational facilities, are made accessible to all. Prevention. A strategy of prevention is essential for reducing the incidence of impairment and disability. The main elements of such a strategy would vary according to a country's state of development or as follows. The most important measures for prevention of impairment are avoidance of war, improvement of the educational, economic, and social status of the least privileged groups, identification of types of impairment and their causes within defined geographical areas, the production of specific intervention measures to better nutritional practices, improvement of health services, early detection and diagnosis, prenatal and postnatal care, proper health care instruction, including patient and physician education, family planning, legislation and regulations, modification of lifestyles, selective placement services, education regarding environmental hazards, and the fostering of better informed and strengthened families and communities. To the extent that development takes place, all hazards are reduced and new ones arise. These changing circumstances require a shift in strategy, such as nutrition intervention programs directed at specific population groups, most at risk owing to vitamin A deficiency, Think of medical care for the aging, training, and regulations to reduce accidents in industry, in agriculture, on the roads and in the home, and the control of environmental pollution, and of the use and abuse of drugs and alcohol. In this connection, the WHO strategy for health for all by the year 2000 through primary health care should be given proper attention. Measures should be taken for the earliest possible detection of the symptoms and signs of impairment. They followed immediately with the necessary corrective or remedial action, which can prevent disability or at least lead to significant reductions in the severity or disability and can often prevent its becoming a lasting condition. For early detection, it is important to ensure adequate education and orientation of families and technical assistance to them by medical social activities. Services. Rehabilitation includes the following: early detection, medical care and treatment, social psychological counseling, training in self-care activities, provision of technical and mobility aids and other devices, specialized education services, vocational rehabilitation services, and follow-up. In all rehabilitation efforts, emphasis should be placed on the abilities of the individual whose integrity and dignity must be respected. The normal development and maturation process of disabled children should be given the maximum attention. The capacities of disabled adults to perform work and other activities should be utilized. Important resources for rehabilitation exist in the families of disabled persons and in their communities. In helping disabled persons, every effort should be made to keep their families together. They enable them to live in their own communities and to support family and community groups who are working with this objective. In planning rehabilitation and supportive programs, it is essential to take into account the customs and structures of the family and community and to promote their abilities to respond to the needs of the disabled individual. Services for disabled persons should be provided wherever possible. With the existing social health, education, and labor wait, labor. Okay. Services for disabled persons should be provided whenever possible within the existing social health, labor structures of society. These include all levels of healthcare, primary, secondary, and higher education, general programs of vocational training and placement in employment, and measures of social security and social services. Rehabilitation services are aimed at facilitating the participation of disabled persons and in regular community services and activities. Rehabilitation should take place in the natural environment, supported by community-based services and specialized institutions. Large institutions should be avoided. Specialized institutions, where they are necessary, should be organized so as to ensure an early and lasting integration of disabled persons into society. Rehabilitation programs should make it possible for disabled persons to take part in designing and organizing the services that they and their families consider necessary. Procedures for the participation of disabled persons in the decision-making relating to the rehabilitation should be provided or within the system. When people such as the severely mentally disabled may not be able to represent themselves adequately in decisions affecting their lives, family members or legally designated agents should take part in planning and decision-making. Efforts should be increased to develop rehabilitation services integrated in other services and make them more readily available. These should not rely on imported costly equipment, raw material, and technology. The transfer of technology among nations should be enhanced and should concentrate on methods that are functional and relate to prevailing conditions. The equalization of opportunities. To achieve the goals of full participation and equality, rehabilitation measures aimed at the disabled individual are not sufficient. Experience shows that it is largely the environment which determines the effect of an impairment or a disability on a person's daily life. A person is handicapped when he or she is denied the opportunities generally available in the community that are necessary for the fundamental elements of living. including family life, education, employment, housing, financial and personal security, participation in social and political groups, religious activity, intimate and sexual relationships, access to public facilities, freedom of movement, and the general style of daily living. Societies sometimes cater only to people who are in full possession of all their physical and mental faculties. They have to recognize the fact that despite preventive efforts, there will always be a number of people with impairments and disabilities, and that societies have to identify and remove obstacles to their full participation. Thus, whenever pedagogically possible, education should take place in the ordinary school system, where it be provided through open employment and housing be made available as to the population in general. It is the duty of every government to ensure that the benefits of development programs also reach disabled citizens. Measures to this effect should be incorporated into the general planning process and the administrative structure of every society. Extra services which disabled persons may need should, as far as possible, be part of the general services of a country. The above doesn't apply merely to governments. Anyone in charge of any kind of enterprise should make it accessible to people with disabilities. This applies to public agencies at various levels, to non-governmental organizations, to firms, and to public individuals, and it also applies to the international level. People with permanent disabilities who are in need of community support services, aids, and equipment to enable them to live as normally as possible, both at home and in the community, should have access to such services. Those who live with such disabled persons and help them in their daily activities should themselves receive support to enable them to have adequate rest and relaxation and opportunity to take care of their own needs. The principle of equal rights for the disabled and non-disabled implies that the needs of each and every individual are of equal importance, that these needs must be made the basis for the planning of societies, and that all resources must be employed in such a way as to ensure for every individual equal opportunity for participation. Disability policies should ensure the access of the disabled to all community services. As disabled persons have equal rights, they also have equal obligations. It is their duty to take part in the building of society. Societies must raise the level of expectation as far as disabled persons are concerned, and in so doing mobilize their full resources for social change. This means, among other things, that young people, disabled persons, shall be provided with career and vocational opportunities, that early retirement pensions or public assistance. Persons with disabilities, PWDs, should be expected to fulfill their role in society and meet their obligations as adults. The image of disabled persons depends on social attitudes based on different factors that may be the greatest barrier to participation in equality. We see the disability shown by the white canner crutches, hearing aids, and wheelchairs, but not the person. What is required is to focus on the ability, not on the disability of disabled persons. All over the world, disabled persons have started to unite in organizations as advocates for their own rights to influence decision makers in governments and all sectors of society. The role of these organizations includes providing a voice of their own, identifying needs, expressing views on priorities, evaluating services, and advocating change and public awareness. As a vehicle of self-development, these organizations provide the opportunity to develop skills in the negotiation process, organizational abilities, mutual support, information sharing, and often vocational skills and opportunities. In view of their vital importance in the process of participation, it is imperative that their development be encouraged. Mentally handicapped people are now beginning to demand a voice in their own and insisting on their right to take part in decision-making and discussion. Even those with limited communication skills have shown themselves able to express their point of view. In this respect, they have much to learn from the self-advocacy movement of persons with other disabilities. This development should be encouraged. Information should be prepared and disseminated to improve the situation of disabled persons. The cooperation of all public media should be sought to bring about presentations that will promote an understanding of the rights of disabled persons aimed at the public and the persons with disabilities themselves. And that will avoid reinforcing traditional stereotypes and prejudices. There is a large and growing number of persons with disabilities in the world today. The estimated figure of 500 million is confirmed by the results of surveys of segments of population, coupled with observations of experienced investigators. In most countries, at least one person out of 10 is disabled by physical, mental, or sensory impairment, and at least 99% of any population is adversely affected by the presence of disability. Causes of impairments vary throughout the world. As to the prevalence and consequences of disability, these variations are the result of different socio-economic circumstances and of the different provisions that each society makes for the well-being of its members. A survey carried out by experts has produced the estimate of at least 350 million disabled persons living in areas where the services needed to assist them in overcoming their limitations are not available. To a large extent, disabled persons are exposed to physical, cultural, and social barriers which handicap their lives even if rehabilitation assistance is available. The relationship between disability and poverty has been clearly established. While the risk of impairment is much greater for the poverty-stricken, the converse is also true. The birth of an impaired child or the occurrence of disability in the family often places heavy demands on the limited resources of the family and strains on its morale, thus tossing it deeper into poverty. The combined effect of these factors results in higher proportions of disabled persons among the poorest strata of society. For this reason, the number of affected families living at poverty level steadily increases in absolute terms. The negative impact of these trends seriously hinders the development process. Existing knowledge and skills can prevent the onset of many impairments and disabilities, could assist affected people in overcoming or minimizing their disabilities, and could enable nations to remove barriers which exclude disabled persons from everyday life. The problems of disability in developing countries need to be specifically highlighted. As many as 80% of all disabled persons live in isolated rural areas in the developing countries. In some of these countries, the percentage of the disabled population is estimated to be as high as 20, and thus, if families and relatives are included, 50% of the population could be adversely affected by disability. The problem is made more complex with the fact that for the most part, disabled persons are also issuing extremely poor people. They often live in areas where medical and other related services are scarce or even totally absent. The where disabilities are not and cannot be detected in time. When they do receive medical attention, if they receive it at all, the impairment may have become irreversible. In many countries, resources are insufficient to detect and prevent disability and to meet the need for the rehabilitation and supportive services of the disabled population. Trained personnel, research into newer and more effective strategies and approaches to rehabilitation, and the manufacturing and provision of aids and equipment for disabled persons are quite inadequate. In some countries, the disability problem is further compounded by the population explosion, which inexorably pushes up the number of disabled persons in both proportional and absolute terms. There is thus an urgent need, as the first priority, to help such countries to develop demographic policies to prevent an increase in the disabled population and to rehabilitate to provide services to the already disabled. The consequences of deficiencies in disablement are particularly serious for women. There are a great many countries where women are subjected to social, cultural, and economic disadvantages, which impede their access to, for example, healthcare, education, vocational training, and employment. If, in addition, they are physically and or mentally disabled, their chances of overcoming their disablement are diminished, which makes it all the more difficult for them to take part in community life in families. Responsibility for caring for a disabled parent often lies with them, which considerably limits their freedom and responsibilities of taking part in other activities. Many children, the presence of an impairment leads to rejection or isolation from experiences that are part of normal development. This situation is exacerbated by faulty family and community attitudes and behavior during the critical years when children's personalities and self-images are developing. In most countries, the number of elderly people is increasing. Already, in some, as many as two-thirds of disabled people are also elderly. Most of the conditions will cause the disability, for example, arthritis, strokes, heart disease, and deterioration in hearing and vision are not common among younger disabled people and require different forms of prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and support services. With the emergence of victimology as a branch of criminology, the true extent of injuries inflicted upon the victims of crime causing permanent or temporary disablement is only now becoming generally known. In summary, the International Development Strategy for the Third United Nations Development Decade states that particular efforts should be made to integrate the disabled in the development process and that effective measures for prevention, rehabilitation, and equalization of opportunities are therefore essential. Positive action in this end will be part of the more general effort to mobilize all human resources for the development. Changes in the international economic order will have to go hand in hand. The domestic changes aim at achieving full participation by disadvantaged population groups. Since economic development needs to alterations in the size and distribution of the population, modifications in lifestyles, and to changes in social structures and relationships, the services needed to deal with human problems are generally not being improved and expanded rapidly enough. Such imbalances between economic and social development add to the difficulties of integrating disabled persons into their communities. It is becoming increasingly recognized that programs to prevent impairment or to ensure that impairments do not escalate into more limiting disabilities are less costly to society in the long run than having to care later for disabled persons. This applies, for instance, not least to occupational safety programs, a still neglected field of concern in many countries. Okay, so based on the learnings, this is an example of a PWD persecution. This means that we need of the time to respect our fellow PWD people. Okay? And because of this, we want the PWDs to respect the people. Okay? I will read you a reflection for today. Okay. We are invited to follow in his footsteps. Like him, we are to be ready to take up our cross, whatever it may be, and carry it behind him. Notice, Jesus tells the disciples to take up their own cross, not his. The cross will be different for each person. It takes the form of some difficult thing, something not chosen but fear. Only by uniting our suffering in life to that of Jesus can we carry our crosses. Is there something in my life today or every day that I'm struggling under the weight of? Ask for the grace you need from God in this time of prayer. We have to die so that we can live. We have to root out what is bad in order that the good within us can flourish. To share the glory of Christ, we have to share suffering. This makes no sense except through faith in Christ. I pray for the freedom I need to be able to let go, to realize that my life is not mine to save. It comes from God and His fullness lies in God. Okay, so next week, we will broadcast on Inclu Radio the 11 a.m. Mass of during the Feast of Saint Benilde, to be broadcast live from the Benilde Center for Alzheimer Ministry on August 18, 2020 at 11 a.m. Benilde Romanson. Teacher, Lasallian Saint. The Mass Presider of the Rector of Manila Cathedral, Reverend Father Reggie Malikdem. We will broadcast this live on Inco Radio at 11 a.m. next week. Because of this, we will do some necessary adjustments in our programming schedule of Inco Radio for next week. Okay? And for today, may mga greetings ako. Today is the birthday of Gary Rayala and Gino Ignacio. So on behalf of Arts Inclusion Philippines, I'd like to greet them, Gino Ignacio and Gary Rayala. Happy birthday and more birthdays to come. Okay? Okay. Ito, August 30. Ito na ang pagbabalik ng Dear HNI. Ito mapapanood na po guys ang Dear HNI sa August 30. Ang host po ay si Miss Patricia Kapunan at we will broadcast it live on Inco Radio until further notice. The Arts Inclusion return will be done later at the third and fourth quarter of 2020. And also, bukas, Asher, Zedric, Royland, and Danmar will be attending the Pasay Sped reunion. That means for the Kumustahan, someone is coming out as a special guest. Billy will be there. I'll be there tomorrow. For 2 hours to. And our topic for tomorrow's Kumustahan are the following. Secretaries Duque role in the COVID-19 pandemic, possible personal social media monitoring by the armed forces of the Philippines, what are the government offices open under the MECQ, the corruption of PhilHealth, and the possible extension of the modified enhanced community quarantine. And the big question is, are you in favor of resignation of Secretary Francisco Duque as the Department of Health Secretary? Okay. Tomorrow, Vincent will fill in for Danmar and Zendrick, and if Chris is available, okay lang. Royland told me. We will broadcast, and tomorrow, for the One Inclusion Live Weekend Saturday edition, I have 2 topics to discuss. Leadership and recession. Okay? And also, from Binild, sa mga Binildians na miyembro po ng Hands Inclusion, makinig kayo. Okay, you do not have to wait for the pre-enrollment on your SIS, but it will be taken care by the renewed Office of the Registrar. It's ongoing since August 3 until August 15. After the pre-enrollment period, the registrar's office will send you your student enrollment record, previously known as the enrollment assessment form. If you want to wish to change the subjects pre-enrolled by the registrar, you can do that from August 24 to September 6. The payments will be ongoing at that time, and the deadline of payments is on September 17, 2020. Online classes for the first term or the virtual Benil will start on September 7, 2020, Monday. Just a week, 2 weeks after the Benil online learning term. At sa mga kaalaman niyo lahat, the MMDA announced the number coding scheme is still suspended until further notice. Okay? Also, Roylan will announce yung sa Novena Mass ni of Santa Clara de Montefalco. It will be on August 17. You'll be broadcasting the Mass, Novena Mass, as part of the Into Radio program schedule. Okay? And also, for mga Binildians, May auditions are ongoing for Unite 2020 as a host and performer, but it will be subject to screening and also to deliberations. To be done by the team. Okay? So good luck guys for that. And also, the Binil student trainers from August 11 and 14, because of this exhibit, webinar, and the live stream performance of the continuing light of agriculture. Okay? Ink Nunian is currently ongoing. If you want to donate using GCash or PayMaya, or you want to donate old clothes, you may do so. Okay? Okay. And if you're sa mga Bulakenyo, may mga pandemic restrictions at bawal na pumunta sa Metro Manila. May curfew na po, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. At hindi na kayo babalik sa Bulacan eh. Diba? And guys, I would like to appeal everyone to continue praying and continue the fight against COVID-19. We need to follow the health protocols. We need to, by doing hand washing, sanitation, disinfecting, taking a bath, wearing a face mask and face shield, maintain physical and social distancing, and also to mass gatherings are still not allowed. Schools are closed, but they're now shifting to online classes first until a go signal is made. And also to, if you're like you're being bored, you only go out for essential services, guys. And also, guys, we continue doing the watch to watch because we need this in order to increase our channel to 1,000 or more. Okay? We'll continue to pray for the return of Hansing Mission Philippines because we have just returned Inco Sports just almost few weeks ago. That's why we at Inclo Radio, we are going to go together. Let us include all of us. We can include it. Okay? So, and also, kung may mga magsa-start ang Dear HNI 7 p.m. 7 to 8 or 9 p.m. Okay? This Sunday, so one inclusion live weekend, I have something special for you guys. In preparation for the Feast of St. Benilde on August 13, sa mga Benildians sa HNI, the topic will be the history of De La Salle College of St. Benilde. I hope you'll enjoy it and make it interesting for you. Okay. Abi. Abi. Okay. Okay. That's it for now for the inclusive report for Friday, August 7, 2020. On behalf of all of us at Inclu Radio and Inclusion Philippines, I will see you tomorrow at 5 to 6 p.m. for the One Inclusion Live Saturday edition and 7 to 9 p.m. for the Kumustahan. I am Carlos Kanahashi. Thank you very much for joining us. Peace out. Good night to all. God is good all the time. God be the glory. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat at pag-alain po tayo ng tuong may kapal. Sa Radyo, include tayo sa isa't isa. Together, one inclusion forever. H and I, God works. Coming up later on Into Radio is Stone, Reaction at Opinion with Albino Chico and Doris Virgo.